There are questions politicians avoid, not because they're complicated, but because saying them out loud changes everything. And in that hearing room, one question finally crossed the line no one in Washington had dared to cross before. Dan Goldman leaned forward and asked calmly, "Director Patel, does Donald Trump's name appear anywhere in the Epstein files?" Patel blinked. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Goldman didn't raise his voice. "Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?" Patel tried to play it off. "I didn't say it was complicated. I just didn't hear you." But everyone in that room knew exactly what had just happened. 3 minutes earlier, Goldman had done something unheard of. He didn't whisper behind closed doors. He didn't leak information to reporters. He didn't hint at it during interviews. He said the name out loud, on live television, with the cameras rolling. For nearly a year, Kash Patel had been telling Congress that the FBI was fully cooperating, that nothing was being hidden, that the Epstein documents were being handled with complete transparency. And now, when faced with the one name everyone had avoided for over 20 years, Patel had nothing to say, not a word, because that name had followed the Epstein story for decades. Everyone knew it. No one had ever spoken it like this, until now. And what happened in the final minutes of this hearing was unlike anything I've ever seen in congressional oversight. This wasn't just about today. This was about months of silence, promises of document releases that never came, files the public was told would be made available and weren't. And the question underneath it all was simple. Why? To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning of the hearing. On paper, it looked routine. A standard Senate Intelligence Committee session. Budgets, staffing, cybersecurity threats. Nothing that would make headlines. And that was exactly the point. Because if Patel had known what was coming, even a few minutes in advance, lawyers would have been called. Statements would have been prepared. Damage control would have been in motion. Goldman made sure none of that could happen. What he was about to do wasn't spontaneous. It was a trap, one that had taken months to build, and Patel walked straight into it. The room looked exactly like every other hearing room in Washington. Wood-paneled walls, long, polished tables, cameras fixed on the witness seat. Patel was already there when Goldman arrived. 3 attorneys lined up behind him, 2 aides holding folders. He sat tall, shoulders back, chin up. The posture of someone who had faced tough questions before and survived every time. He looked calm, prepared, untouchable. Goldman took his seat across from him, quiet, controlled, almost friendly. They nodded at each other. Nothing about that moment hinted at what was coming. The first half hour went exactly as expected. Questions about foreign interference, cyber threats, funding requests. Then Goldman shifted. "Director Patel," he said, "I want to ask about the Epstein documents. The files your office told this committee would be released on the 14th. The files that have been sitting in FBI storage for 6 years. The files the American public has been asking for over a decade." He paused. "Where are they?" Patel's jaw tightened, just slightly. The kind of movement most people would miss, but not the cameras. "Senator," Patel replied, "the FBI remains committed to releasing all materials that can be made public within legal and national security limits." Goldman nodded. "That's not what I asked," he said calmly. "I asked where they are." And then something happened that almost never happens in hearings like this. Patel hesitated. Not long. Just a fraction of a second. But it was enough. Goldman saw it, the room felt it, and the cameras caught it. That pause told a story no prepared statement ever could. Some questions don't shock because they're difficult. They shock because no one is brave enough to say them out loud. And in that hearing room, one name finally crossed a line Washington had protected for years. An anchor leaned in and asked the question everyone had avoided. "Director Patel, is Donald Trump's name anywhere inside the Epstein files?" Patel blinked. He asked for it to be repeated. The question came again. Calm, clear, impossible to escape. And suddenly, the man who had spent nearly a year promising transparency had nothing to say. For months, Patel had told Congress the FBI was cooperating fully, that nothing was being hidden, that every document was being handled responsibly. But the moment that name was spoken, the room changed. Because that name had followed the Epstein story for more than 20 years. Everyone knew it. No one had dared to say it in a public hearing, until now. And what followed wasn't just uncomfortable, it was historic. Because this moment wasn't about a single question. It was about months of missing documents, promises that were never kept, files the public was told would be released, and quietly weren't. which led to the question Washington never wanted to answer: why? To understand that, you have to go back to the start of the hearing. On the schedule, it looked ordinary: a standard oversight session, budgets, staffing updates, cybersecurity threats, nothing dramatic, nothing headline-worthy. And that was intentional, because if Patel had known what was coming, even minutes in advance, lawyers would have stepped in, statements would have been drafted, and the entire moment would have been controlled. This wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, carefully, for months. What unfolded wasn't an ambush. It was a trap, and Patel walked straight into it. The hearing room looked exactly like every other one in Washington: dark wooden walls, a long, polished table, cameras aimed straight at the witness seat. Patel was already there. 3 attorneys behind him, 2 aides holding thick folders. His posture was confident, shoulders back, chin raised, the look of someone who had survived tough hearings before. He appeared calm, prepared, untouchable. Across from him sat the anchor, quiet, steady, almost friendly. They exchanged brief nods. Nothing hinted at what was about to happen. The first half hour passed exactly as expected. Questions about foreign threats, cybersecurity risks, budget requests. Then the tone shifted. The Epstein documents, the files the FBI promised would be released, the records that had been sitting in storage for 6 years, the information the public had waited more than a decade to see. And then the simple question: where are they? Patel's jaw tightened, just slightly, a small movement, but the cameras caught it. He delivered a familiar response about legal obligations and national security, carefully worded, polished, safe, but it didn't answer the question. And then something rare happened. Patel hesitated. Not long, just enough, a fraction of a second. But in politics, that pause speaks louder than words. The anchor noticed. The room felt it, and the cameras captured it, because in that moment it became clear something was being held back.